friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 9 of my 2023 Valentine Card Series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Berry Rainy Day. So I have stamped those images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with my bears, and I'm going to be coloring them all the same using my E40 markers. I'm starting with E42, E43, and E44 for their main parts of their body. So I'm using that E44 to lay in some shadow on the outside of this little bear's body. It depends on where they're facing. This little guy's facing forward, so I went all the way around his face and then on the underside of his paws and right up under the hem of his raincoat on his legs, and then blend it out with the E43 and use the E42 for the highlight. The E42 did push back the E43 a little bit too much, especially on the face, so I did go in with a second layer of just the lightest 2 shades. Then I'm going to move on to the next bear, and for this one I'm going to add the shadows more on the right hand side since he's facing toward the left, and then also at the same places on the paws, on the underside there, and under the hem of the rain jacket, because that would be casting a shadow down on the legs. So I like these E40s for bears. It gives them a very cozy, kind of cuddly fur tone. It seems really soft and very teddy bear-like. I used to have a teddy bear that was almost exactly this shade of brown, so it always reminds me of that. So just continuing and then again going back with a little extra E43 wherever that E42 pushed it back too much, and then blending out with another layer of the E42 as well. And then I'm going to do the little bears the same way. So this is actually going to be a pop-up card today. I'm going to be using the Peekaboo Pop-Up for the first time. I bought this die set quite a while ago, several months ago, but as I've said before on my channel, interactive cards just intimidate me, and I will often kind of push back experimenting with them because I just I'm afraid to try, I guess. I don't know why. I guess it just puts me out of my comfort zone. So today is the day. This is actually for the current Lawn Fanatics Challenge, which is interactive cards. So I decided it was time to pull this one out and put it to use. So finishing up the coloring on these bears' fur, and then I'm going to move on to their muzzles. I wanted those to be a bit lighter, so I'm going to keep the E42 and use that as the shadow, and then blend that out with the E41 and use the E40 for the highlight on the end of the muzzle. And then of course I wanted to give them some rosy cheeks, so I'm using R11 and R20 for that. Just a little oval shape on the cheek area with that R20 first, and then going around it with the R11 just to blend it out a bit. And I decided to go ahead and do it on my frogs as well, even though I haven't colored them yet. You can do it either before or after the coloring. I usually prefer to do it after, but since I had the markers out, I thought, what the heck, I'm just going to add it now. And then I'm going to add in R000 and continue using this combo. Since this is a Valentine card, I wanted to have some reds and pinks in here. So I'm going to do 2 of the stripes on the umbrella with this combo, putting that R20 in the grooves where the fabric is kind of bent down over the metal structure of the umbrella, and then blending out with the R11 and then using the R000 in the center where that fabric is the most poofed up because that would be reflecting the most light. And then I decided to do the second umbrella in this same combo, and so I'm just going to put that shadow on the right hand side This is actually going to go in the hand of the bear that's kind of running. So I just kept the shadows the same as I did for his body. And then I'm going to do both of the little bear kiddos in this pink combo for their rain gear. So just putting those shadows with the R20 on the underside of the arms, on the edges of the coat, a little bit on the pocket, on the front part where the front flap kind of overlaps the second one where it's kind of buttoned. I put a shadow there as well. And then on the back of the little rain boots. So all of that with the R20 and then blending out with the R11. And then using that R000 for a nice highlight. And then for this second little bear, I'm just flipping my shadows. Since he's facing toward the right, his shadows are going on the left. So just keeping it consistent so that the light is always on the face. That's just how I prefer to do it. And then we're going to move on to my reds, and I'm going to keep using the R20s and then add in an R30 to darken that up. So I'm using the R24 and R29 because they are still in the same tone as the R20s that I was already using. And then adding in that R39 for a bit of richness and depth in the shadowed areas. So I'm going to do both of the rain gear for the adult bears in this red combo. So I laid in the shadows with the R39 and pretty much in the same exact places as the little bear on the far right. They're basically both facing forward, though the little bear is a little bit tilted toward the left, but pretty much forward. So the shadows are going to be the same and the highlights would also fall in the same spots. So I'm blending out that R39 with the R29 and then using that R24 for the highlight. And I did carefully color around the buttons, although I'm going to end up coloring them in a darker shade later on, so I didn't have to. But sometimes I don't know yet what I want to do. I thought about possibly coloring them gold, and so I didn't want that red undertone to be there. But in the end, I decided I didn't want to introduce another color into the palette. I wanted to keep it to the colors I had already used in, once I get there. So I'm going to end up doing them in a darker shade that I was using on other things. You'll see what I mean when I get there. But I'm going to continue coloring the second bear's raincoat. I guess one is the mom and one is the dad, maybe. I don't know. You can decide for which one is which for yourself. But anyway, I'm just going to color them the same, starting with the R39 once again in those shadowed areas, blending out with the R29, and then using the R24, which has that really pretty kind of coral undertone, and it just really almost makes this red combo glow. This has definitely become my most favorite red combo in recent years. I just love it. I think it's the perfect shades of red for so many things. So I'm going to finish up this guy here, and then I also wanted the umbrella to be red and pink to kind of drive home that Valentine theme. So I'm going to color the other sections on the top with this exact combo. And for the two on the side, there's not a lot of room there for a highlight, so just using the very tip of my marker to get those two grooves in there. And then basically I'm only going to be able to squeeze in the R29 for those, but they wouldn't be getting as much highlight anyway, so it's okay that they're a bit darker. I did get like a tiny touch of the R24 in the one on the left, but I didn't leave enough room on the one on the right. And then for the underside, I wanted it to be just a little bit lighter because the light, whatever light there is, would be coming from above and kind of making that glow underneath. So I decided to pull in the R22 and I left off the R39. So I just started with the R29 for the shadows, blended it out with the R24, and then I'm going to fill in with the R22. And I really like how that turned out because it just gave that little bit of extra light under there, like I said. So then I'm going to move back to my E40s because I was going back and forth on what to do about the umbrella handle and the rod, but I decided I didn't want to do any grays, so I'm just going to darken the combo up using E47 and E49 for the handles on the umbrella and then also that little knob at the top. And then I'm going to do the buttons on the adult bears jackets with this combo as well. Super narrow little areas, so I just use the 2 shades. And then I'm going to use the R42 for the handle, so it's almost like a wooden handle or a bamboo handle. And then I'm going to move on to the frogs. For those, I'm going to use YG01, YG03, and YG05. Started with the YG05 and then I'm blending out with the YG03, which for some reason was looking a little bit darker than the YG05 today. I don't know, but I did add in a little bit extra there. You can see I was like checking to make sure I had the right marker in my hand, but it was fine. So I'm going to blend out with the YG01. And then I'm going to move on to my puddle and my little splashes of water. And for those, I'm using BG10, BG11, and BG13. And I am going to color in several more of the frogs and the puddles and the water splashes off screen. I was not sure how many I was going to need since I've never created one of these Peekaboo Pop-Up cards before. So I just wanted to make sure that I had enough images to really fill in the scene. I'll take a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and go over the eyes of my frogs and my little bear, and then I'm going to trim these images out with their matching dies. Alright, so I have taken the main piece of my Peekaboo Pop-Up and die cut that out of a piece of mermaid cardstock and a piece of noble fur cardstock from Lawn Fawn. And that die creates some little score lines to show you where you need to fold. I'm using my Lawn Fawn Teflon bone folder to make sure that I can get a really nice crease on this cardstock and make sure that it is really well folded so this card is going to work well. This cardstock is pretty thick. This is the cardstock that I use for all of my card making. It's really nice and sturdy, so your card is going to hold up, but it is a little bit tricky to see those score lines because it's so thick they aren't grooved in as much as they would be on thinner cardstock. So I just had to make sure that I was folding on the lines. I did the green one with a valley fold and the blue one with a mountain fold. As you can see, the one kind of dips low, the green one, and the blue one dips high on the edge. Then I'm taking my Lawn Fawn ruler and just marking this at the 2 3/4 mark. I couldn't find my pencil, so I just used a black pen and put it a tiny bit above where I needed to die cut. And then I'm taking this sloping hillside and I'm taping that in place and then running that through my die cutting machine so that I get the hillside that is to the correct height for the interactive portion of this card to work. I did want to do some stenciling on this background piece, and because it is so large, it doesn't fit in my waffle flower mini media mat that I usually use with the stencil on it. So I'm just taping that down to my work surface and then taping the stencil in place over top. And the stencil I'm using is the Rainy Day stencil from Lawn Fawn. All of the products that I used will be linked below in the description bar if you're looking to find them for yourself. So I'm just using painter's tape to hold that in place so that I can add on some Distress Oxide ink, and the color that I'm using is Salvage Patina, which is just a bit darker than the mermaid cardstock. So I'm just going to run that over the panel, holding that stencil down in place, so just so it's a little bit tighter to the cardstock. And then adding those raindrops over the top portion of the card. I'm going to bring it down pretty far because I want to make sure that that goes, you know, farther than the hillside, so there's no like gaps between the hillside and the sky. But it doesn't need to go all the way down to the bottom because the hillside will cover that up. I wanted to check how that was doing, so I'm just peeling up a little bit of the painter's tape so I can see, there you can see all those raindrops. I wanted them to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to tape that back down into place and just add a second layer of that ink and even pounce it on in certain places so I can get some lighter areas and some darker areas. And then once I'm happy with that, there was one part over on the right hand side where I was worried that it might not go far enough down because that's where the hill slopes lower. So I just added a little bit more, and then I am going to add that into my Waffle Flower mini media mat so I can just darken up the edges of that and make them look a little bit, it just makes the stitching detail pop a bit more to have them darker. Then I'm going to take the Noble Fir piece and I'm going to darken this one up with pine needles. The pine needles has a tiny bit of like a bluish tint to it, especially on this Noble Fir cardstock. And so it almost looks as if the water is kind of raining down from the sky and standing on the grass. So now I'm ready to start assembling this. So I'm going to add some adhesive to only the section where that first fold line is, and I got a little bit over the edge, so I'm going to grab my Xyron adhesive eraser and just make sure that there is no adhesive where it shouldn't go so that the card is working properly. And then I'm going to line this panel up over top of the blue one and just make sure it's on there nice and straight, and then burnish that down into place. So then I'm going to take some more mermaid cardstock, and I'm going to take 2 of the 3 little pop-up things. I wasn't sure which one I wanted to use since I've never used this die set before. So I'm going to cut out both, and then I have options and kind of play around. So I'm going to fold these 2 pieces down on those lines again and use that Teflon bone folder to really press those seams. Although I am making a mistake here, I didn't realize it at the time. It'll be an easy fix, so not to worry, but I am folding these incorrectly. They needed to go the opposite direction, and you'll see me fix them in just a minute. So I'm just making sure that those are folded on the crease. Like I said, it's a little bit tricky to see where those lines are exactly on this thick cardstock. But I just love how sturdy it makes your card in the end, so it's worth it for me. So again, just trying to find those lines and fold them on the correct spots and then press them down. And now I'm going to test them out on that hillside. And there you can see I was realizing there was no way that this was going to work because they were folded incorrectly. So I'm just going to reverse the direction that it's folded, and this is how it should look. It should have, you know, it should be able to pop up as the card is opened. So I'm just going to reverse both of these and then try them out and see where I want my little element to pop up. So depending which of these 3 elements that you use, your image will pop up at different areas across the scene from left to right. So I decided to go with this one. I'm adding my adhesive only to the tiny triangle that is folded down where it does not have that extender piece. And then I'm just making sure everything is going to fold over nicely before I add that adhesive. And once I can see like where exactly that hillside is going to fall on the right hand side, I can grab that adhesive and run it down that folded panel, and then hold this green portion over top so that it all lines up and press that down into place. And there you can see how that element works. You just open the card and it pops up automatically. So now I can bring in my images and start to stage this scene. And my thought for this card was to have one of the little frogs on the top of this little pop-up piece. So I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue there and then put him on the very top of that pop-up mechanism. And then I wanted it to look as though he is sitting on top of the umbrella for this guy. So I'm adding my liquid adhesive only on the back of the bear's raincoat so that none of the adhesive on his head would kind of like mess up the mechanism. You know, it would make the back of the card all sticky. And I also didn't add any glue under his feet because I wanted to be able to tuck one of these puddles underneath so he can be kind of splashing around in the water. So I'm building this card a little bit different than I normally would, because normally I just start with the largest images first and then work my way out. But for this one, I kind of had to start with the pop-up mechanism. There you can see my idea kind of coming into place. When you open up that card, the frog pops up and lands on top of the umbrella. And like I said, you have to be really careful where you're placing your glue, because anything that is popped up above that green hillside is going to stick to the back if it has glue on it, and then your pop-up isn't going to work. So I only placed it on the feet of the second bear, and then I wanted to add a puddle underneath him as well. I was just making sure that the green part doesn't bend. It doesn't on the right hand side. It only does on the left, so I can add elements over there as well and it won't interrupt the mechanism in any way. And then I'm just testing out where I wanted these elements to go. Like I said, this one is very different from how I normally build a card, and I am working on a video on how I do that for you guys so you can see exactly what I do. But I didn't really have a clue where the images were going to end up when I started creating them and stamping them out and coloring them. So I kind of have to do a little bit more playing around and just see where I want things to go here and there, you know, just kind of base it on what looks right in the space, trying to fill up any holes and kind of spread things throughout, make sure that the scene is, you know, I don't know, just making sense. Now I do wish that I hadn't glued down that puddle yet behind, because I only had stamped and colored 4, and that splash mark that is over top of it kind of would have filled in that space, and then I could have used that puddle a little bit lower. But anyway, it is what it is. It's the first time using this die, like I said, so it was definitely a trial and error type of thing. So I'm going to just continue adding things here and there, figuring out where to add my adhesive, testing things over and over to make sure I'm not going to mess this up, because that would be the worst thing after all of that hard work creating it, to kind of add glue where you shouldn't and then it doesn't open up. So you also will see me kind of fold it over and open it up again, fold it over and open it up again, seeing how much space is going to be available before I add the rest of my images in both orientations. Whether it's closed or open, I still want it to look nice and full and to really fill out the scene. So that's why I'm just kind of testing things as I go. This was definitely a much slower process than my usual cards at this moment, because by the time I get here, I usually know exactly where my images are going, and sometimes I'll make little tweaks here and there, but I pretty much already know where my images are going to go by the time I have them colored. And for this one, it was exactly the opposite. I really didn't know where things were going to go, and it was just kind of trial and error. Filling in the right side where those folds are was just a little bit trickier, because any images I added over there had to fit within those folds or they would have gotten bent up. And actually, while I was doing this, my camera died and I didn't realize it, so I apologize, but I missed the last few images being added to this scene. But anyway, there you can see it now. And so I have popped this in my MISTI so I can stamp my sentiment, which I'm doing in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Stamping I love you, rain or shine in that top left corner. And it was a little bit darker on the left hand side than the right, so I just inked up the right hand side of those sentiments and pressed it down a second time. And then this second part is optional, but I decided to do it. I'm just taking a piece of speckled eggshell cardstock from Lawn Fawn, which I die cut with the extra frame type piece in this Peekaboo Pop-Up die set, and I'm stamping a little frog and then have a happy day in mermaid ink down at the bottom. And then I'm going to glue that onto the back. That's going to give me a space to write a message to the recipient. And you could do it anyway on the back, but I just wanted it to be on something that stood out a bit more and looked a bit more polished. So to fill in the rest of the sky, I took the little cloud die that matches the stamp that came with the Very Rainy Day stamp set. I just wanted the white clouds though without the outline. So I die cut 3 of those, and I'm filling in some of the empty areas in the sky with those, kind of tucking them behind things and you know, just adding them over on the folded piece by just adding the glue where it will be adhered. And then you can kind of see how that looked. I didn't like the way the one in the middle where that was positioned though, so I am going to shift it just a tiny bit. The glue had already dried. It does dry really fast, so I did have to peel it up and it left some residue. So I was only able to move it just slightly to the left, but I think it looks a bit better there. So I decided not to add any embellishments. I think the pop-up feature is pretty cool on its own, and I didn't want to distract from that. So there you can see that card in action. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I love chatting with you guys. Make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on so you're alerted when I post a new video, which is every Monday and Friday. As I said earlier, all the products I use will be listed and linked for you in the description bar below. If you'd like to stick around on my channel, here are 2 extra videos that I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one to check them out. And thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.